Hey y'all, welcome to Inflect. I'm Michael Daehne, and on today's show, I'm joined by Amy Mills, President and CEO of Emancipet. Emancipet is an Austin-based nonprofit organization on a mission to make veterinary care affordable and accessible to everyone. Since joining Emancipet in 2006, Amy and her team have transformed the organization from a small, grassroots spay and neuter clinic into one of the largest and most impactful nonprofit veterinary care providers in the country. Earlier this week, Amy announced that she will be transitioning out of her role in late 2024, concluding an incredible 18-year run at Emancipet. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today to talk more about the amazing work Emancipet does every day and to share some of her reflections from her time leading the organization. I'm sure you will enjoy my conversation with Amy, who is one of the most talented, creative, empathic, and mission-driven leaders I know. Hey, Amy, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today. It's been a big week with lots of news about your transition from Emancipet. So I feel like I got like the exclusive first interview
That's right.
in the wake
right.
of your announcement. So I'm really excited to talk to you about Emancipet and your journey and some of the transformation the organization has been through over the last 17 or 18 years.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about all of those things.
Why don't we start, for our listeners who may not know about Emancipet, can you tell us more about Emancipet and its mission and kind of the cause or the why behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So the mission statement of Emancipet is that we're on a mission to make veterinary care affordable and accessible for everyone. And when people who have never heard of Emancipet hear that for the first time, it kind of begs this question about like, well, why do we need that? Because not everybody is aware that in the United States, we have something that we call an access to veterinary care gap. So there are about 60 million pets, dogs and cats, beloved members of families who have families who love them, right? Who are not getting the veterinary care that they need at least some of the time. And the reason for that is because their families cannot afford veterinary care. When we get a little bit deeper and we say, well, why is that happening? Structurally, that's because in the United States, we have so far relied entirely on the market sector to provide all veterinary services. It's not like in the human healthcare sector where we know that we need a safety net for lower income families and for unhoused people and other people who are marginalized and don't have access to kind of private healthcare. In the human healthcare sector, we have that safety net. We have nonprofit hospitals. We have federally qualified health centers. We have Medicaid and Medicare and things like that. But in veterinary medicine, that safety net structure, that infrastructure does not exist. It hasn't existed yet. And so the market sector cannot provide care at an affordable rate for everyone in the country who has a pet and who needs that care. And because we've been relying only on that market sector, that's what's created this gap where 60 million animals are not getting the care that they need. So Emancipet exists to help close that gap. We see that gap is causing a lot of suffering, both of animals and the families who love them, who really want to take the best possible care they can. And so what Emancipet actually does is we open low-cost veterinary hospitals inside communities that have historically been underserved or not served at all by market sector veterinary providers. So when we open one of these hospitals, we provide a limited range of services at a very low cost and often for free. We never turn anyone away for an inability to pay. And that is our primary strategy for how we are kind of tackling the work of closing the access to care gap in the United States.
Yeah, thank you for that excellent overview. No one's better at describing the problem and some of the solutions that Emancipet is leading the way with than you are. And I think, I was thinking about this morning. We've known each other 5 years, which it feels like it's not been that long.
Yeah.
We started working together on a technology modernization project for Emancipet. And I admittedly showed up to that project not knowing anything about this problem or having any expertise or knowledge of the broader veterinary industry. And I was just immediately consumed by this idea and fascinated by the model that Emancipet has created and the work that you and your team are doing to kind of address this cause and this major problem. And I guess that maybe leads to my question of, when you showed up, how much did you know about the cause, about the veterinary space? What was your background before that? And what kind of brought you to Emancipet in 2006?
Oh, yeah. So, that's a great question. So I'm a nonprofit lifer, 501(c)(3) for life. I have never worked for a for-profit company. I kind of knew, I went to college at St. Edward's University here in Austin and knew that I really wanted to go down a nonprofit kind of community service path. But at the time, I was really focused on kids and youth. And so my career before Emancipet was I did pretty much every job in the nonprofit sector. I've been a fundraiser. I've been a communications person. I did program development and program evaluation, kind of, nonprofit leadership. But most of it was youth and kiddos. But animals have been so important to me in my life. I've had a really deep kind of pull towards helping animals since I was really, really little. My mom says my first word was bird and my second word was woof. So, I mean, we can see where that trend is going. But I didn't work professionally with animals, and I was not aware at all of an access to veterinary care gap. But I was very active volunteering with the local Humane Society at Austin Humane Society. I walked dogs there every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. till 12, and got really deep into service in that particular way, and started teaching dog manners and puppy kindergarten classes, and kind of really leaning into like the dog behavior side of that volunteer work. And that actually gave me my first exposure to this issue in a way that I had not experienced before. So despite working with lower income families through my professional work and working with animals through my volunteer work, the thing that actually brought them all together was Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina happened, the Humane Society, where I was a volunteer, ended up housing some animals that were pets that had been evacuated from the hurricane area in New Orleans. And I was one of the volunteers that was working with those animals. And what I saw, just as a volunteer who sees a bunch of animals, is that all of these animals no one was spayed or neutered. They were not well. They were not healthy. Lots of kind of chronic disease. And in that kind of moment before I really understood what was going on, I felt very like, oh my gosh, these poor animals. I was very like almost judgmental of like who would allow their animal to, to kind of be this sick. And it was several days later that a bus from the convention center came over and all the families of these pets came in to visit their pets. And I get emotional telling this story because my whole life changed in that moment, because what happened was these animals that had been so shut down, and I had just been seeing them honestly kind of like as victims, they just lit up when they saw their families. Their families walked through the door and it's like tail wags and like joy and so much happiness. And it was just this incredible moment. And I saw so much love, like just this overpouring of love. And I started talking to some of these families, and they told me their stories about how the reason that they were in this situation is that they wouldn't evacuate without these pets. They stayed, National Guard was like, come get in this boat, we'll take you, but you can't bring your dog. And they were like, absolutely not. And so they were the last to evacuate because of how much they loved their pets. And it was in like those conversations and that moment where I realized that the amount of veterinary care your pet gets has nothing to do with the amount of love that pet gets, and the amount of love that is there in that relationship, and how vital that connection is between people and our pets. And it was in that moment that I was like, so we have to do something about that. And just coincidentally, a few months later, I started getting emails from friends of mine with this job posting that was the job of the CEO of Emancipet. I'd never heard of Emancipet. And they said, this is your job. You should go apply for this job. And I was not even looking for a job. I was working at a youth service organization that was really great. And I applied kind of on a whim and ended up getting the job. And just those coincidental kind of moments of being in those particular pathways led me to being in a situation where I actually had the opportunity to create something special out of the foundation of what Emancipet was, to kind of to fix something in the world that I realized was broken in that Hurricane Katrina moment.
Wow, that is such an amazing story. And I think you hit on something that I have found to be really unique and important in the work Emancipet does, which is it's not just about the animals. It is, of
Mhm.
course, a lot about the animals, but it's about this unique intersection of the humans and their animals and the families they have together. And Emancipet is serving both and enabling them to remain a family, which has incredible mental health benefits
Yes.
and joy and love and all of those
Yes.
things that you mentioned. And so I think it's really cool to hear kind of the origin story of your interest and the stars aligning, so to say, for
Yeah.
your entry into Emancipet.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about all of those things. It is all the stuff that makes life worth living can be found in the relationship between people and their pets.
Yeah. I think we've covered a lot of I'll say the mission and the vision and the why, but something that can get lost in this is Emancipet is a large organization. It is operationally intense. There is
Mhm.
a lot that has to happen for this model to work and to be able to serve pets and their families. And I was looking at some numbers from when you started in 2006, 2007 until now, and I may not have these exactly right, but annual pet visits were around 22,000 when you started, and they're at 230,000 the last I saw.
Yeah.
Now per year, you've led a merger, growth across the country from just being in Austin, major partnerships with PetSmart charities. I mean, just massive amounts of growth. What are the biggest changes you've seen in the organization through the course of that time, and maybe reflect on some changes you've seen in your own leadership style too?
Mm. I feel like has just been a constant, right? I just feel like since I showed up, it's just been, change after change. But what's interesting is it's almost like there's different kinds of changes. But early on at Emancipet, so when I got to Emancipet, it was a solely spay neuter organization. So the focus was very much on spay neuter as a means to an end. And that end was reducing the number of unwanted litters that would end up in a shelter and be at risk. So, very noble end, but it was not about making sure that families could stay together, making sure that animals had veterinary care just because they need and deserve medical care. It was a different mindset at that time. So it was about maximizing how many animals we could get kind of spayed and neutered. And the shift I wanted to bring about first, my first big shift was wanting to have that change in mindset from just, spay neuter as a means to an end, but a veterinary care kind of more broad than just spay neuter because animals need way more than just spay neuter, although spay neuter is essential. Um, and wanting to kind of center the people as beneficiaries of this work too. And that shift was really hard. And when I look back at all of the changes, like a lot of what we've done at Emancipet, the growth, getting new clinics open, kind of the technology transformation work that you alluded to, all of those things are hard to do in the sense that it requires a lot of people to kind of change the way they work. But those early changes were more like getting people to change the way they think and feel about the mission. And so those changes, I think, were really foundational and essential, and they were slower. They took more time. I mean, it sounds so wild now, but looking back, just the first big kind of operational change that I remember leading was we're going to start offering preventive care. So just basic vaccines, flea and tick prevention. We're going to start offering these things. But to the organization that had been so focused only on spay neuter because that was what would kind of reduce shelter intake, that felt kind of like a totally different mission to them. It felt
Yeah.
completely different. And the amount of just kind of angst about that shift was huge. And then once we did it, it started to kind of unlock, I think, a lot more compassion and understanding for people and their experience. But that shift was really hard and really slow. And it actually took several years to get it achieved. And I think once those mindset shifts and culture shifts started happening, that all the other changes that we've had to make, the big transformations, they were less difficult. They're all hard, but they were less difficult because we were all on the same page culturally and philosophically about why we were there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. It's the changing hearts and minds, or culture eats strategy for breakfast, or whatever
Yeah.
whatever cliche you want to use. But that's the really hard part. Not to say that the operational initiatives and opening new clinics and building partnerships and technology and operational stuff, that it's not. Of course, it is hard, but it's a different kind of hard than that kind of what's our North Star and getting everyone aligned around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about in your leadership style? How has that evolved over the course of your tenure at
Oh my
Emancipet?
gosh. That's a wild question because I was a child when I started. I was in my 20s, and, the kind of highest level of leadership position I had before Emancipet, I was the deputy executive director of a small nonprofit. So had some leadership experience for sure, but deputy executive director is very different from CEO. And I think we had, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 employees at that whole nonprofit. So really, really different. And when I showed up at Emancipet, of course, in my 20s, in my first leadership role, in a pretty new industry to me, the imposter syndrome was profound. And I really leaned into just data and logic. And so let me show you the spreadsheet for why this is the right thing to do. And surely everyone will just be like, oh, now that I see the data, I'm going to do that. And that turns out that isn't how things work. It's not how people change. And I think that I had to relax into being more comfortable with a relational and emotional way of connecting in order to get the big shifts made. And that I didn't know that, because I think when I was really new in leadership, I was like, well, it's just about what is the most logical, efficient, cost-effective thing to do. And of course, everyone will just see it. And that kind of, led to a lot of frustration for myself and other people. So I think leaning into that, especially in mission-driven organizations, we're all here for a mission, and kind of giving space to leading with heart, honestly, and not just head, I think was a big early transformation for me. And then later, I think a lot of my leadership style has shifted in the sense of just being more comfortable moving forward and taking action when you don't know. Like I used to want, 100% or 90% of the information before making a decision. And now I'm really comfortable being like, yep, we don't know. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to document about our assumptions. And we're going to kind of move forward about that. So being a little bit looser about the amount of information I need, the amount of certainty that I need before making decisions has helped me a lot.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I want to build on something you said about balancing the head and the heart, because as I mentioned earlier, Emancipet is an operationally intense nonprofit. You are facilitating this high volume clinic model. You have a large staff, you have scheduling and appointments and technology, and of course the healthcare aspect of it and all that. You're balancing all that, running a business with this mission and this bold goal, and kind of trying to solve this broader problem. And I think there's lessons in that for not only other nonprofit leaders, but even in the for-profit space, balancing who do we want to be as a business, what do we want to be in the future, with how do we meet payroll, right? How do we kind of hit our targets this quarter, this year, whatever. Tell me a little bit more about how you as a leader have balanced that mission alignment with operations, financial efficiency, that kind of thing.
Yeah. What's interesting about, I think, that question with Emancipet specifically is, so if you think about the operating environment in which we find ourselves, we are one organization. And as I mentioned earlier, the size of the access to veterinary care gap is 60 million animals. So just right off the bat, are you going to be able to serve 60 million animals? No, you're not. So So you already know that the need is greater than what you're ever going to be able to meet. And so then the question becomes, well, how many animals can we serve? And so the mission of Emancipet to make veterinary care affordable and accessible to everybody in an operating environment where there are 60 million animals who need your services across the country. And in each of the cities where we operate, hundreds of thousands of animals that need the services. In a way, operational efficiency is baked into the delivery of the mission. So what I mean by that is every single day, we don't want to waste anything. We don't want to waste staff time. We don't want to waste client time. We need to serve as many animals as we possibly can in a very high quality way every single day that we're there. And because our mission demands that of us, because when we do less than that, we're missing the opportunity to close that gap for one more animal, two more animals, three more families. What's nice about that is because our staff are so mission aligned, that operational intensity doesn't feel like it's for some ulterior purpose. It's not for profit. It's not for making anybody wealthier. It's to deliver on this mission. I think that's the benefit that we have, that our mission and our business needs actually align really, really well. What's hard, though, is that in that operating environment where you can't serve everybody, you do have to make really hard choices about what kinds of services are we going to provide. We can't provide all services either, right? We run a modularized model where we select the highest need kind of medical services in a community, and we deliver only a small number of those. So we have clinics that are only providing spay neuter services, preventive care services, and maybe heartworm treatments, and that's all they provide. So our patients may need more, and we can't provide those additional things because it won't work with the financial model. And keeping that really, really tight requires a lot of discipline. And I will often tell people a lot of what my job is to hold the line, like constantly like saying, this is what we can do, and we can't go beyond that. It's less about operational efficiency, but more about being really disciplined about the things we can do and then maximizing those things to serve as many animals as possible.
Yeah, love that. I mean, I think that's a masterclass in strategy and organizational leadership. It's about choices, which is the really hard thing. I even feel this as a small business owner. What kind of projects are we going to do? What kind of industries are we going to work in? What locations can our clients be in? The temptation in any business or a nonprofit is grow. I want to serve more people, or I want to grow the business or whatever. And oftentimes that leads to the trap of trying to be everything to everyone or do too many things. So I love that you hit on that as kind of core to your role and the work you've been doing at Emancipet. I just have a few more questions. So one, you still have like 9 or 10 months to go as CEO of Emancipet. So I don't know if you've had a chance to reflect on this, but I'm going to put you on the spot and say, what's your favorite part of being the CEO at Emancipet? And what do you think you're going to miss the most when you make that transition?
Oh, such a hard question. I love this job very, very deeply. And actually, kind of going back to our head and the heart thing we were talking earlier, I have a head and a heart thing, right, for each one. So I think like a social innovator in the sense that my mind just constantly is just finds unmet needs, right? And Emancipet has given me the opportunity to create and innovate and develop strategies for meeting unmet needs on something that I feel so deeply passionately about is just such a gift. My mind loves it. It is fun to try to think about how are we going to meet this unmet need? Like there's not a blueprint for it. We're not working in a space that has like 50 years of social innovation behind it. We're working in a pretty new space for social innovation. This access to care gap is still pretty newly understood, and not a lot of organizations are kind of working in that gap yet. So I have loved the opportunity to create with our incredible people who work at Emancipet and who have worked in Emancipet in the past. Like I've been able to create with really amazing colleagues and coworkers. We've had incredible board members and incredible funders who want to like get in that kind of roll up your sleeves and let's get creative about what kind of strategies, what kind of clinic models. I mean, our ability to think through everything from like, well, what would make the clinic in Philadelphia work with a completely different demographic and completely different kind of needs versus a clinic in Houston, Texas. Like that's really fun for me on the head side. And on the heart side, there is just nothing better than sitting in an Emancipet lobby. It's just a joyful place because people who have been excluded, who have never felt welcome in a veterinary practice before, have never felt comfortable enough to show up because they didn't think they could afford it, are very comfortable in our lobby. And their animals are adorable, of course. And so I love that part. But just talking to people about their pets and how they got them and why they love them. And just to share one little story. So I was in one of our clinics a couple weeks ago, and it was right before Christmas, like a couple days before Christmas. And this older gentleman was holding this tiny little puppy, and he could see me looking at the puppy, and he was like, "Do you want to hold her?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." So I came over and sat with him, and I was holding his puppy, and I was like, "Tell me the story. Like, is this going to be a Christmas present for a grandkid? Like, what's going on here?" And he goes, No. He said, I don't know how it happened, but I've been praying for more patience in my life. I've been really struggling with patience. And I prayed one night for patience, and the next morning this puppy was on my doorstep, and we don't
Oh
know
my
how she got
gosh.
here. And I live out in a rural community, and there's no neighbors, and this tiny little puppy was just there. And we were laughing. I was like, "Oh, that puppy's gonna bring you patience." Like that, like that's what puppies do. And I said, "Well, did you name her Patient?" And he goes, "No, I named her Love."
Oh,
And you're just like, that story sounds made up. And that story or some version of it happens every single time I sit down in a lobby and start any conversation with somebody. It's like these profound moments that people have with animals. And oh, I will miss that. I will miss that so
yeah.
much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I can confirm that there's nothing better than sitting in an Emancipet lobby. Well, let me end on this question. What gives you hope and optimism about the future of Emancipet? Obviously, there's a big access to care gap out there and a lot of
Yeah.
challenges, but what gives you hope?
Well, I'm very hopeful about Emancipet because we've built a really strong foundation. What makes Emancipet is the people who work at Emancipet, and our people are really strong. And we've built and are going to continue to build Emancipet into the kind of employer that is a place where people want to work forever, because we need people to come to Emancipet and stay for years to really get that innovation and get that quality down. So I feel very hopeful about our ability to keep doing that. I feel very excited about the fact that this year we're going to open a dental center. We're going to relocate East Austin, which is our oldest, most rundown clinic, into a new permanent space for Colleen. These foundational facilities are setting us up for the future. On a bigger scale, I feel really optimistic for the field of access to veterinary care because it's suddenly everywhere. Everybody's talking about it inside the veterinary industry now, inside the traditional animal welfare space, which was much more sheltering focused. They're talking about access to veterinary care now. I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that if you care about the well-being of animals, access to veterinary care is the number one most important priority that we should have. So the fact that it's not just Emancipet saying that anymore, because it felt really lonely for a lot of years, but it's not just us anymore. That gives me a tremendous amount of hope for the future.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let me say thank you for taking the time to talk. I so enjoyed our discussion, but also, and more importantly, as a supporter of Emancipet and someone who cares deeply about the mission and the work the organization is doing, thank you for everything you've done over the last 17,
Oh,
almost 18 years. And I guess everything you're going to do for the next 9 months, you're not off the hook just yet to lead this organization and position it for the future you mentioned. I think the organization is so much better off because of you and your leadership. So thank you.
thank you so much. It's been truly a gift and an honor and just a joy every day. I love it. And talking to you has been the same. So thank you.
Oh, likewise. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.